Okay, I think I've got it. Hi everybody, this is Kat coming to you live from Oak Nights. I have my live studio audience here.
Yay!
And so I thought that I would jump on both. Let's see, if I'm looking this way, it's at Instagram. If I'm looking this way, it's on Facebook. If I'm looking over here, it's my live audience, which, sorry if you're online, they're going to get most of my attention. But this is such an important topic for getting out on a successful adventure. I wanted to share it with as many of you as possible. I had a lot of interest in this one, but a lot of schedule conflicts. So if you can't catch this live, here you go. You can watch the video later. Reach out to me if you have any questions. So we're going to get going. I'll do my best to pop over and check if any questions roll in on the live feed. If I don't get you during the live stream, I'll get you after. And we may have questions in the room as well. So I'll repeat those for you if I get them in the room, just to make sure they pick up on the sound. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. If you're not familiar with Oak Nights, this is our monthly event for the outdoor adventure kind community. We have a different topic every month where we share something of importance for encouraging everybody to get outside, get a little bit of education, a little bit of inspiration by the time you're done with the evening. So as I shared, we're doing Itinerary Essentials tonight. This is, in my opinion, out of a lot of experience, a lot of trial and error, the top 5 things you need on a successful itinerary for heading out on any kind of outdoor adventure. So this is very flexible. It's meant to be used to fit you and your adventure style. So whether you're going out on a hike, which is probably our most common Northwest outdoor activity, or if you're heading out to go snowshoeing this winter, heading out for some skiing, maybe you're into canoeing, this is still an itinerary platform that you can use and build off of. So I am going to have a handy dandy cheat sheet here for my own notes, live studio audience. And if you would like a copy of this, contact me. We'll get you on the mailing list and you'll get a copy. You guys will get a copy as well, digitally, save some trees. And then we also have a little mock-up itinerary that you can use to build your adventures off of. So you guys ready to jump in?
Ready.
All right. Thank you for being such willing participants. So the first thing that you start with is, where are you going to go? You have to know not just where you're going to go, but how you're going to get there. So you start with your route. Defining your route includes your starting and your end point. You don't always finish where you began, as well as any alternate route options you may have in mind. A lot of trails, looking at hiking and similar activities in the Northwest in particular, here in the Portland metro area and within a couple hours of it, intersect with other trails in the area as well. So it's good to know if there's that potential that you may take an alternate route, maybe to get some extra mileage if you're having a good day, or an alternate route if you need to cut your adventure short for any reason. Maybe it's a little harder than you anticipated. I know in the winter months, I've definitely encountered terrain that's a little snowier or icier than I was prepared for, and I've turned back due to that, high water crossings, things of that nature. So it's just good to have those alternate routes in mind when you head out and to capture them as part of your potential itinerary. Also, you want to keep in mind distances and elevation gains that are happening. That helps you with some of the later steps we're going to get into with your plan. And then along with all those details, make sure you get trail names. And a lot of trails in our region are also numbered. So if there is a number listed, include that. A lot of times the trail names will change over time or even depending on who you're talking to, but those trail numbers are very consistent across all the different land management organizations in the region. So that is digging into step 1. That's our route. Now we know where we're going. We know what that plan looks like. Next thing you want to check is conditions. So I've already mentioned ice and snow. In the summertime, conditions might mean heat. It might mean water crossings that you'll encounter on your adventure, especially if you're one of those canoeists I mentioned at the beginning. You might want to know what the river levels are going to look like. So you want to check all of the conditions for your adventure before you go as well as while you're out there. The weather has a serious impact that lasts. And so just because it's not snowing today doesn't mean it didn't snow 2 days ago before you got there, and you won't be dealing with half-melted slushy snow, the refrozen ice, things of that nature to consider with your plan. Checking in. Let's see. So forecast before and after. You also want to check for pass requirements. Passes can be one of the most confusing things with getting out on adventures in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm not going to dive into all of that today, But definitely make sure you check your pass requirements before you go. Nothing is a bigger bummer than getting to the trailhead, not having the $5 you need for a day pass, not having the option to purchase one at the trailhead be an option, and having to scrap your plans because you weren't prepared with that piece. And then the last thing that I recommend checking before you go is if you can find it. This can be a little tricky depending on where you're going, but look for current trail conditions. The place to start with that is with whatever land use management is in charge of that area. They'll list closed trails, they'll list known problems like maybe landslides, forest fire dangers in the summer months. The other thing that you can look for is trip reports, and there are a lot of different resources on the internet for trip reports. A couple of my favorites, if you're in Washington, there's the Washington Trails Association, has a great website with tons of resources and information. If you're in Oregon, then Oregon Hikers is another great website. They have a forum where people post trip reports frequently, and that can be a great place to find out what's happening on the trail in real time or as close to it as possible before you head out. And that can just help you be prepared for step 3, which is getting your gear list together. We tend to have a pretty consistent gear list. I was actually talking with somebody else about this just a little bit ago. We don't change out our backpack probably every time we head out. We don't change out our boots. We don't change out our rain gear. It's pretty consistent trip to trip. But as we head out into special conditions, then we may need to make some adaptations to that list. So that could be things like in the wintertime, carrying micro spikes for your shoes in case you encounter ice. It could be things like, oh, I lost my connection on Facebook. They're just going to have to catch up. Could be things like snow baskets for your trekking poles. In the summertime, high temperatures could mean that maybe you're packing more water than you normally do because the temps are going to be high. I like to pack one of those microfiber cooling cloths. Those are just a nice little thing to carry that add almost no weight and make you so much more comfortable. So little tricks like that, and checking out your route and conditions, forecast before you go can help with that, as well as if you do hear from somebody that, and this would have been a helpful one for me New Year's Eve, learn from my mistakes. New Year's Eve, I headed out with some friends to go snowshoeing, and we didn't check for super recent trail conditions, and there was not enough snow for snowshoeing. So we packed our snowshoes and did not need to because we ended up hiking. So that's a best case scenario type of encounter. It could have been the opposite, where we didn't check and we were planning to hike, and there was too much snow and we wouldn't have been able to do it. So definitely something to be on the lookout for. The next piece that ties into this, so now you know where you're going, you know what the conditions are, you know what you're packing. Knowing trail conditions helps you determine how long it's going to take you to cover those miles that you went over in step 1. And knowing your elevation also can be a factor in how quickly that mile may or may not go. So you can build your schedule off of that. That lets you have a start time and an end time for your adventure, whether that's a half-a-day jaunt or a multi-day adventure. It also lets you determine if you need to have any check-in times while you're out on the trail with people who are waiting for you back at home. It's often a requested thing when I'm out, especially on solo adventures. So that's a pretty short one, but it's a very important step to have that schedule. That lets people know when they maybe should start to worry and be looking for you. Ideally, you want to give yourself a little bit of cushion there in case you are going into a more challenging adventure. Let your contacts know. It's going to be a little harder. I expect to be back in this time frame if you think it might be a little bit of a push for you to make it back at a specific time. I often do that. And then that does lead me to the last step. I've mentioned this one a couple of times already just in talking through this list, but that's contacts. I always recommend having at least 2 contacts at home. That way if somebody has something come up and they're no longer available to check in on you, you still have somebody waiting to make sure you made it back safely. It's just a nice little peace of mind. And then also, if those contacts are not your emergency contacts, making sure that your contacts know who those people would be. So my most frequent contacts do tend to be my emergency contacts, but that's not always the case. Sometimes when I'm in a different part of the state, I'll have a contact who's close to where I'm hiking, and then my emergency contacts back home, and they know how to get a hold of each other. The last thing I would include with your contacts is going to be the area management agency, whoever is in charge of maintaining trails in that area, as a contact for your other contacts. So if you do end up being late, they can check in with the local ranger station, the local management for that area, They may have news that just hasn't been relayed back to your contacts yet. They might know what's up with you, or they might be able to help initiate an on-the-ground search if that's necessary. Hopefully that's not for anybody who's listening to this, but you want to cover all of your bases. And having all that does provide some real peace of mind for people at home. And I know for a lot of us, having loved ones worry while we're out on our adventures can actually be a real obstacle, so it helps everybody. So the one other piece that I mentioned I have, and I'll show the camera, but we'll see. We'll see how well this shows up. See if I can get it off my clipboard. I have a short itinerary that covers all those steps that we just went over. Here you go, Instagram. Facebook's missing out. They lost their connection and I don't have time to fix it. So I'm happy to share this. If you'd like a copy, just shoot me a message. But this just covers those same 5 steps. They are a little bit differently ordered on this page, and that's with a good reason. If this is something that you wanted to build off of and hand to your contact, I put some of the information they would probably want to look for first, closer to the top, and that's the schedule. When you're going to be starting, what your check-in times would be, and what your end time would be, or the time you expect to be back to either your car or cell phone range if you think you're going to be out of cell phone range. It's never a good thing. We say, I'm going to be back to my car by 2:30, but you're still 2 hours away from getting back to cell phone signal. I've done that. Learn from me. Route details, just like we went over, your trail name, or trail names. If you're covering multiple trails, make sure you include them all. Your starting and end points, those alternate routes that we discussed. Conditions information, so that's your weather before you get out, and your weather you're expecting while you're on the trail. Keeping in mind in the Northwest, especially around mountains, it can change on a dime. Your passes and permits that you may need, and then other known conditions or obstacles that you expect you might encounter based on your research. Then you've got your gear information, and the reason you list your visible gear is in case somebody does need to go looking for you, they know that you're in the purple coat with the green backpack, and that you're the person they're looking for. If they don't have that description, it can make it just a little bit trickier and a little harder for them to try to see if maybe somebody's seen you on the trail or out. So it's just a good piece of information to have, and search and rescue or emergency contacts will ask for that information if it's needed. Specialty gear, that's talking about things like the micro spikes or snow baskets that you might want to pack due to specific conditions you expect to encounter. And then your vehicle information, again, that's for those emergency scenarios, but if you do leave your car parked at a trailhead, having your contacts be able to say that it was a silver Mini Cooper with a specific license plate helps search and rescue know that, yes, you were parked at this trailhead, or your car's not there, they know they need to broaden the search to something else. And then your contacts at the bottom, either first and second contact, and then also, if they're different, your emergency contacts, and you can also list in your area management agency, so they don't have to go searching for it if they haven't heard from you. It's already handy for them. I did leave a space on this as well for any additional notes. Sometimes you come up with extra little bits of information you want to jot down as you're planning out your adventure, such as remember to take this side trail to see a particular waterfall, remember to be looking for this particular type of bird that's in the area that you were about, something you want to look for in particular. And then the entire back page, I did leave room as well for an adventure recap. I find that it's really helpful when you get back, not just to journal for your own memory, which is something a lot of people like to do, but to recap what went well for you on this, as well as maybe anything that you learned, any opportunities that came up, so that as you get ready for your next adventure, you can build off of that experience and have some notes to refer back to. Maybe you're going to go back and do that trail in 3 months. You'll be able to look back and go, oh, that's right, I ran into a bridge that was out, it probably hasn't been replaced yet, or I ran into a spot where there was a lot of trees down across the trail, there could have not been trail maintenance yet, so just things that you can be aware of. Or don't forget that there's no drinkable water on this trail, pack extra. Little notes for yourself. So that's what I have for Itinerary Essentials. It looks like Facebook never came back up. I don't have any pending questions over on the Instagram group. Anybody in the room?
So how often, do you use this for every hike that you go on?
So that's a great question. So the question was, do I use the itinerary for every hike that I go on? Yes and no. I follow these steps for pretty much every hike I go on. I don't necessarily always write it down, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that my contacts are fairly consistently the same 2 people, so I don't need to reintroduce them to one another. they have a lot of the information already. The other piece is that, like, the gear list being a great example, I have a gear list that I've written and refined and recycled for day hikes, and I've got a longer one for backpacking, so I don't need to redo it every time, and so I can reuse some of that information. But if I'm researching a new trail, I absolutely go back, and I enjoy writing down the details. I'm kind of a geek that way. So I have this notebook. I love my visual aids. So I have this notebook. Some of you have seen it on social media. And this is where I do a lot of that itinerary planning. That's where all this information has been vetted because I've written it all down. And it's got that recycled gear list and old itineraries so that I can refer back and reuse that information. And I do tend to do my breakouts in here as well, my recaps. A lot of that also ends up on social media when you go back and share pictures. You tend to put in little story bits. This is just a different way to capture that. So, good question. Anything else?
Okay. On the area management, how do you determine if you're going through multiple areas? Do you just Google on who manages trail number so-and-so?
Pretty much. So the question was, how do you figure out who manages the area that you're in? And essentially, yes, I do just Google and see who manages that. In some cases, I know because I'm familiar. But if I don't know, then I will look to see what the nearest either ranger station is. You can see if it's in a state forest, a national forest. You can find out who the ranger station location is for that place. If it's something more inside the Portland metro area, it could even be managed by Metro, the local management. And so just knowing that information up front. And again, if you're into a more rural area or a more backwoods area, you're going to need to know the ranger stations closer into urban locations, in a true emergency, 911, or being able to contact local authorities. But yeah, I just look it up and look on a map. And also, as you're doing your trail research, a lot of the times you'll find you end up back on that management organization's page to get that information in the first place. A lot of the Forest Service and state parks have a wealth of up-to-date information that helps you plan those trips. And so you've got their contact information at the same time you're doing your research.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So I've done a whole lot of talking. We've had a couple of really great questions. I am going to do my best to share this video later. We'll see how that works out. Hopefully you caught this. If not, hopefully you can catch the replay. Shoot me any questions you have. I'd be happy to answer. Have a good night.